Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. We do Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. And rock with me and get down to this new jam. With my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Tala Falava, kia ora, and welcome to the Reads of Rosa podcast. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. She's a professional MMA fighter born and raised in Aotearoa, New Zealand, fighting out of Purebred in Saitama, Japan. She is an entrepreneur who has her own brand of luxury design goods with roots in Aotearoa, Japan, and Hawaii. She is an avid reader and fellow bookworm, and I'm looking forward to hearing her book recommendations today. Welcome to the show, Sarah McCann.
Kia ora, Rosa.
Hello, how are you?
Kia ora, konbanwa.
Konbanwa.
Kia ora. Oh man, you sound so good introducing. I'm like, wow, this sounds so professional.
Man, I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
you're here. I know you're very busy. You've got lots of things going on, but I appreciate this. I'm so happy to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here. I've seen some of your podcasts, and I was just telling you before we started recording that I really love the vibe that you have, because you talk about all sorts of topics with so many different people, and I love it. It's good. I'm excited.
Thank you. Onegaishimasu.
Hey. So, kia ora, ko mamua, ko titirangi te maunga, ko uawa te awa, ko Ngāti Kurunui te hapu, ko te aitanga hauti, ko Ngāti Ira, ko Ngāti Kahungunu, ko Ngāti Parau Ngāiwi. Kia ora, everybody. My name is Sarah, or Sera, as you can see on the name tag, McCann. I was born and raised in Uawa in Gisborne, on the east coast in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I've spent my life there, and I've been living here in Japan with my husband for the last almost 9 years. And I think we can just start there. Thank you for having me tonight, Rosa. I'm excited
it's an honor. It's an honor. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, you're a reader, you're an avid reader, you're a bit of a bookworm. I think that's how we connect. Have you always been a reader? Did you have access to books growing up, or was it later in life that you kind of like really got into books?
No, we were readers growing up. That was my brother's not so much, but I remember my sister and I being readers. Do you remember when you're at primary school and they had those the catalogs, like the flyers, the Scholastic flyers, and they'd have them at the school, and
you can order books.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes, like, if you were like, they'd have little competitions within the school, and if you're a good student or something, you'd get reward, you'd get a book or something like that. I remember that being a really cherished part of my childhood, so I really looked forward to that. So yeah, those were my kind of geeky treats. As I was growing up, I really looked forward to those.
And growing up in Aotearoa, like, were you involved in like kapahaka? Were you speaking the language, using te reo, or every day? Like, what was that like?
Up until Form 2, so that right before high school, my schooling was at Te Kura Reorua or Waikirikiri, so it was a bilingual school, but I was in the Reo Māori unit, so my education right up until high school was all in Te Ao Māori. And then I went to Campion College, which was a Catholic high school, so it was like flipped. And
wow.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. And so Mum and Dad told us that that was like the deal they had when they had us, because Dad's Pākehā, Mum's Māori, and it was kind of like they get half. So half of our education was in Te Ao Māori and half was in Te Ao Pākehā. That way we have that kind of that biculturalism and different perspectives. And then whatever education we wanted to do after that was up to us. So that was interesting.
Well, it's a good compromise. I think it's a good compromise. Pretty good. And then like, you know, between like because you're a fighter, you know, you're fighting now, but you've been in Japan for around 9 years. Prior to coming to Japan, well, first of all, how did you even, like, what brought you to Japan? And then I guess later we'll get into the question about fighting and how that started for you. What brought you to Japan in the first place?
It sounds really cliche and really cheesy, but my heart brought me.
Should I cue in the violin? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, for real. No, it's totally cliche, and it's sometimes okay. So I met my husband. I was doing a web series, like a hobby, interviewing people around the fight scene in New Zealand. So I was into the fight scene before I came to Japan, and my husband actually came to New Zealand as a guest at a seminar, at a expo there, an MMA expo in Auckland, and I interviewed him for our web series. And they're like,
was it like love at first sight?
It's funny, like we get this question a lot, and we kind of, the more we think about it and we talk about it, it wasn't. We vibed, like we got on really well and stuff, and we vibed, but it wasn't like, oh my God, he's the one or she's the one. It wasn't anything like that.
You were swept off your feet and ran after him. Wait, you ran after him, didn't you? We're getting there, right? We're sorry. Carry on. Tell your story, sis. Tell your story.
No, you're good. So no, we kind of at that time, we vibed and we kind of kept in touch, and then we started a long distance relationship, and we did that for a year. So I was traveling. I was still like I was living in Wellington at the time, so I was traveling to Japan and to Hawaii. So he's fourth generation Japanese American. So he was born and raised in Hawaii, but he's been living in Japan for over 30 years now. So I don't know, I think we vibed on that because Hawaii I find is really similar to home. So there was a lot of similarities there, and just like kind of culture, and even just the way he was brought up and stuff, and some of the value, family values and things like that. And we got on really well. So and it just kind of evolved. And then a year later, I packed up my stuff and moved to Japan. And gosh, I feel like Peter Pan. Like I really feel like I'm like waiting to grow up, but this is my life, and I feel super lucky and really grateful. And like my life is an adventure, and it's fun. It's so much fun.
That's great to hear. And then of course, like, because you're in Saitama, and have you two always been based out in Saitama, or did you move to? Oh, okay, so
yeah,
you're so like an OG.
No, he's the OG. Like, I'm the blender. I just come and blend. So he's got a home here, and at the time when I first came, we were traveling so much. That would be out of the country at least half, 6 months out of the year. So would go, overseas from like a month or two, then would come back home, and all the weeds in our gardens, like everything was overgrown. So we'd have to like clean it and, start fresh. But then about 6 years ago, we got our dogs, and now because of them, someone's always got to be home. So it's actually been a blessing, because now we can kind of take care of our house and our gardens a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think I forgot to ask this, just in case people are like, who is this husband they're talking about? Was he a fighter, or was he has he just always been involved in the training of fighters?
Just so he was a fighter.
Yeah. Just for people who are wondering, who is this guy they're talking about?
Yeah, so my husband, Ensign Inoue, was a fighter in Pride and UFC back in the day, and he's retired now, but he trains fighters, and including me. Right. But to start with, like, he wasn't my trainer. I was, we've got other like teachers and sensei here, and he wasn't training fighters at that stage, but slowly, you know, over the years, he's kind of gotten back into it. And I think in his words, he was just burnt out on the whole, because he was kind of, you know, deep into the fighting and the coaching. He was just burnt out on it. So, you know, his role was more as like a, you know, just a supportive partner. So now he's more of an active role in the coaching and stuff, which is great.
And then when did you decide to, like, I know you were involved in the scene back home, and then you come here and then you start training and you go hard. Like, yeah, man. What was that transition like, I guess, from home to coming to Japan and then picking up, continuing?
Actually, yeah. So when I came here, I'd only started, like, I was still relatively new in the fighting. I'd only been around it for like a couple years. And I'd had a couple amateur fights and stuff back in New Zealand. So when I came here, I was kind of like, oh, you know, I think I'm done. Like that was an interesting experience. You know, it's good. Let's go on to different things. And that kind of, I just let it sit there for a little bit. And then about a year and a half after, you know, being here, I was kind of like, oh, like there's that. I still had that fire.
Right.
I needed to kind of, like, I feel like I need to see it through. And so I sat down with Ensign and I told him, you know, love, I've still got this, you know, this desire, this kind of like thing eating at me that I feel like I need to explore more and pursue. And yeah, he was totally supportive. He's like, you know, if you're gonna do it, let's do it properly, and you know, let's really get in there. And so I did. So I started off with back into like kickboxing and Muay Thai, and then it was him. He kind of suggested, he's like, because my style, like, I like to be quite physical in terms of the contact, like, and he kind of said, I think you'll like MMA, because with kickboxing there's a lot of distance and you know, it's a little different, the tactics. But he's like, I think you're like MMA, maybe you should give it a go. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm keen. And then I did, and I loved it. And yeah, here we are.
You're a champ. And then,
No.
I mean, what are some of the challenges of, I mean, I think I know, but I mean, what have been some of the challenges of your journey as an MMA fighter?
So one of the big challenges with MMA specifically is the fact that it's mixed martial arts. So there are so many different martial arts to cover. So for example, before I was just doing like kickboxing and Muay Thai, and that's like its own discipline. But now with mixed martial arts, you've got like the kickboxing, Muay Thai, you got boxing, you got the ground, like the jiu-jitsu, you got wrestling. So you've got all, and then you got to put it all together. So there's so much more to consider. So that's a huge challenge in itself, and that can be quite like mentally exhausting too. So there's that. And for me personally on this journey has been the like physically, my body and the dieting. And so my last fight, I haven't fought for 3 years, so we're just getting back into it again this year. So COVID kind of put a stop to things for a bit. And then, but before that, I missed weight, which is a huge, like, I still say, like, you should never do that. But yeah, long story short, I had a really bad weight cut. My body freaked out, and it's been a real uphill battle since, because things that, you know, people just think, just exercise more and eat less, isn't the way to do things, you know. So yeah, so relearning, you know, to be a bit kinder to my body, and, you know, changing my attitude towards eating, and, you know, and exercising and resting is important. And yeah, so that's been one of the, and still continues to be like one of my big challenges right now, is that aspect to it, because I love food too.
Yeah. What, man, what's the scene like in Japan, like amongst like other, you know, are there a lot of female MMA fighters, or is it that you fight outside of Japan?
So that's a super good question, because there are a lot of female fighters, but they're tiny. Just because Japanese
Yes, right.
women are tiny. So, for example, they'll fight at like between 47 and 51 kgs,
Wow.
and at my lightest, I was fighting at like 61 kgs, which is still way heavier than them. So they were having a hard time finding me opponents at that weight. And now my next fight, I'm looking to be like 70 plus kgs. So I'm heavier than that now. But yeah, as soon as you start getting over the 60 kg mark, it's really hard to find fights here in Japan. So for my fights, they actually brought in, like I fought a couple Koreans and an American girl. And that's why with COVID, it was really hard for them to get opponents because the borders were closed. So they couldn't get anyone in. Yeah, so that was a challenge. But yeah, there are a lot of girls, and it's getting really popular here, which is awesome.
You mentioned, you love food, and I was wondering about the training, your routine. Is it like you can, I mean, is it that you're training 24/7? So that means your diet also always needs to be on lock. Do you know what I mean? Is there ever a point throughout the year where you can kind of like ease off a bit, or like how does it work?
I suppose it depends on the person as well. Like in an ideal world, it'd be great to stay in shape,
Mm,
all day, every day, and just be ready to go. But the way, from what I'm learning too, like the way our, women's bodies are,
mm,
they don't respond the same as guys' bodies. And so, staying in shape constantly can be really hard. But even mentally, it's hard because you start to develop, and I notice these behaviors in myself, I start to develop unhealthy relationships with food and stuff,
mm,
and demonizing food, which isn't healthy, for our way to our spirit. And
mm,
it's, yeah. So sometimes, like, I have a nutritionist that I work with. She's based in Australia, Michelle Reeves, and she's my nutritionist, but I call her, she's like a therapist too, because she's so awesome to talk to about food, and how I'm feeling about food too, and not stressing or feeling guilty, that I ate
mm,
this or ate that, because she's just hammering into me. Food is not good or bad. It's just food. It's just, it's when we get excessive about things. So you still have
mm,
to live your life. And so I'm still, at 35, I'm still learning these,
mm.
and especially in our cultures too, like food is love. So
Yeah.
I just came back from home for a couple of weeks, and we decided to, for that time, I just take a little bit of a break, enjoy being home, enjoy the food, like try not to go crazy, but try not to think about, just enjoy
Mm.
the love that's associated with food too. And I did, and it was great. Like, it was a really nice break. Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's
Yeah.
actually what I want to talk about next is, this trip home. Recently, you visited home to be with your family again. It'd been a while.
Yeah.
I know you had an awesome time, but there is something specifically that I want to ask about is um, your moko kawai. Did I say it right? Moko kawai?
Moko kauai. Yeah.
Kauai.
Got it.
That beautiful, beautiful. Tell us about your journey in terms of preparing for that. Is it something that you've been thinking about for quite a while? Did COVID get in the way? And just what is the story behind it? Mm,
Yeah. So going back, so to start with, so my mum has her moko kauai done.
mm,
She has her lips done too. And so just seeing her, and also back home, it's so normal. So we grew up, especially on the East Coast, there's such a high concentration of people that wear not just moko, but they wear, moko kanohi. So we see a lot of our
mm,
aunties and uncles, and there's a lot of people with moko kanohi. So it's so normal to us. So it's really interesting being here in Japan, which is like complete opposite, but that's a whole other conversation.
We'll have that conversation soon. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Coming.
Yeah. Jumping the gun, Sarah. So like we've kind of grown up around it, but I always thought, to be honest, I always thought that it wasn't for me. And I think a part of that was because I'm fair as well. So I always thought, my sister's darker than me. So, maybe she'll have, and she has a beautiful, she's beautiful and it would look so beautiful on her. So I just always imagined that she would have it. And then about 10 years ago, I think it kind of just started, I just started, kind of having this feeling like, oh, maybe I will, have one and carry one. And so that's where it kind of started from. Yeah, so it's about 10 years in the making, like seriously thinking about it. And there were a whole lot of things, like little wānanga, like little kind of discussions along the way, like throughout those 10 years, like with whānau and with, like with mum and with my extended whānau, like aunties, uncles, nannies, papas, and just kind of learning. But also a huge thing that's come out of it is learning about a lot of the kind of colonized ideas that we still carry. So for that, that I still believed in and had to kind of unlearn and unbelieve, like you had to be, there were certain qualifications that you had to have, like you had to, korero Māori, you should be able to like karanga or do kapahaka or, have kids, or so there's all these things that people think you need to have, in order to be able to have one, to wear one, to receive one. And so it was unlearning a lot of those kind of thoughts. And it's pretty much so what I've learned from my my uncle, my papa kupua, is that, if you're Māori, you qualify. So, and just be a good person. That's all he, just wear it and be a good person. So it was really interesting trying to unlearn all of those other thoughts that had come in over the years that had just been like, when you learn things and you just hold on to them and you never really think about, wait, where did that thought come from? It just is because that's what you've been taught. So that was a really big part of the journey. And yes, COVID did interrupt it. So I was meant to have it done at a mokopapa, which is like a collective, so a group of whānau within the iwi, within our tribe, would be be done together to support as a group. So I was meant to do that, and then COVID hit. But I was just talking to our mutual friend, Hone Bailey, because he's just had his mata ora done recently. And we were saying that it's kind of fortuitous because I feel like it was delayed. It was like our tipuna, our ancestors saying, wait, not yet. Like you're not, it's not time yet. And it's been neat because, I met Hone last year or the year before last. So for the last kind of couple of years, him and I have been having like a cup of tea via, video chat and meeting up and having our own little wānanga about it in the build up, to us getting it done. And it's felt really nice because normally, when you're at home, you're surrounded by family, you're surrounded by whānau, so there's like always these opportunities to do that. But when you're overseas, like especially in a place like Japan, it's really hard to stay in amongst our culture and be with our people. So it was a blessing. I really think it was a blessing that we found our friendship and we were able to support each other through that. And so we think that it was meant to be. We were meant to meet and kind of go on this journey together. So that's been a really lovely thing to have. Yeah. and in terms of its meaning, so everybody is different as well. But in general, what I tell people, and this is my 2 cents, is it's a way to honor my ancestors by having them, on our, front and center. It's a way of honoring our ancestors and wearing our ancestors front and center. So it's not necessarily like an identifier, as more of like a way of honoring them.
Marks of mana. Marks of mana. That's what it is.
Way of thinking of it. Yeah.
Man, and then how do you, are you still surprised when you look in the mirror? I mean, how now that you're back in Japan, let's talk about that. Now that you're back in Japan, I know Hone was just like, he thought he would get stares, but people are not, it's like, whatever. People just go about, do what they got to do, minding their own business. What's it been like for you?
I'm in the same boat as Hone. So it's, if anything, most of the reaction has just been online. People notice it on my social media, but especially in Japan, because we're still masking, we're still wearing our masks everywhere. So people don't really see it. The only people that have are the ones that I train with, the guys that I train, I train with, and a lot of them have tattoos, and they love, they know that I'm from New Zealand, so they they love the Māori culture, and they they complimented it. So that was nice to see it received like that. But I was kind of waiting for that, even when I came through like immigration and stuff.
Right.
But nothing. It was a little anticlimactic.
That's okay. That's a good thing. As you were talking and explaining your journey, it reminded me of that experience that I had with you and Hone, with the famous Japanese tattooist, your very good friend. Was it in Saitama? We went and performed, and there were all those people with Japanese tattoos. That was buzzy as. What's your friend's name again? The tattooist.
Her name is Shodai Horiren, which is Horiren the First.
Yes, Horiren the First.
Yeah.
That was just man. That was just what an experience.
Yeah, that was lovely. So for people that don't know what Rosa is talking about, so Horiren had a gathering of a lot of her friends and clients. She's a tattoo artist that does traditional tebori, which is the uhi hand tattooing, and she had a gathering, and Rosa and some of the Ngāhaue whānau came and performed, did a bracket for them, and and they loved it. I mean, it's hard not to.
And then it was even more exciting was seeing the women that were there showing off their back. I know there's probably like a term for it. It was like, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Or done traditional, like the traditional Japanese tattooing.
Yeah.
Man.
Isn't it? It's interesting though how that's kind of their style here. Like, so instead of, like back home or pretty much anywhere else in the world, you can, you have your moko or your tattoos,
right? And
it's kind of on display. But in Japan, it's still kind of taboo because it's associated with the gangsters and yakuza.
Yeah.
So a lot of them cover. So what they do instead is they have these gatherings of people with it, and that people will take off their their layers and then show and talk about it and check each other's work out and appreciate it.
Yeah,
so different,
so beautiful. And it's so funny because since I've been in Japan, I discovered this beach. There's this one beach that I always go to, and it's real nice. It's never too busy. And then in June I happened to go down there, and I went right to the end of the beach, right? Because I'm like wearing shorts, but I'm trying not to like draw attention to my legs. And then I saw these like group of guys full-on body tattoos, and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm all good. I think I'm okay in this part of the beach. I was just like, I think this is for us. Okay, I see you. They're like looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm just like, carry on. But I was just like, oh, okay, so this is the part of the beach where we're all good. Okay, we're good. But
it's the non-judgmental part of the
beach.
The
non-judgmental part of the beach. That's exactly what it was. So I want to kind of get into your businesses. You are a business owner. You have a luxury brand line, Sera bags. Yes, that's Sera, like katakana. I'm gonna put a picture. At this point, I'm going to put a picture so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Like, is she making this up? But yeah, like, tell us about how this venture came about. Or how did you start this business?
So the bag started because, well, I travel a lot. And basically I was trying to find a bag that I wanted. And I couldn't find a bag that I wanted, so I made it.
Okay, wait a minute. So the bag that you wanted, tell us what that bag is. Like, what are the specifics of this particular bag that you need or wanted?
Okay, so, like when I'm traveling, I want something convenient. So I started like younger me would be like, oh my gosh, but I wanted a fanny pack, like a belt bag.
Right.
So, that's why younger me would have been like, what? So I wanted a fanny pack because they're really convenient, but I kind of wanted something that was a bit nicer looking. And, that I could it was nicer looking so I could wear it kind of in nice situations as well. And then as I was kind of thinking about it, I was like, oh man, it'd be so cool if this could turn into like a purse as well. So that when I'm traveling, I've got the convenience of a fanny pack, but then it'll convert into a purse. And that way I won't have to bring, an extra nice bag if I go out for dinner or that kind of thing. So that's where the idea started, because I'm not a designer. I'm not like an artist or anything. So I had to kind of physically try and put things together to show the manufacturers what I wanted to do. Yeah, because I don't have the skills to, just whip up a bag. So it was kind of like, there's a lot of like cutting and pasting and even like using paper to illustrate, what I wanted places. And so that was kind of a interesting part of the process though. It was, it really broke it right down. And I went through so many samples. So that was a long process, just testing out the bags to see, oh, wait, I want a pocket here, or I don't like this material, or so that's how that bag came about. And actually my husband started using it too. So we found out that it wasn't it's actually unisex. So it wasn't just a women's bag. And we're like, this is awesome.
I like, because on your website, you're like, ta-da, hey, unisex, there we go. There's another reason why you should buy the bag. I think what I really liked on I was reading on your website, and it says, you're not in a rush to release new products. The Sera journey is an enduring one. I really like that. And listening to you now kind of explaining the long process, I understand why. I really like that. I was like, okay, that's super cool.
Yeah, I enjoy it because I get to learn at my pace as well. Even the designing and even like the ordering and all that kind of stuff. And also, I feel so kind of confident and proud. Like we use these bags personally. So I want to, every time I put something else, I want to have that feeling.
Right.
That I'm like, hey, this is good. I stand by this. Because I think integrity wise, I wouldn't like it if I had like a bunch of bags that I thought were average. I want people to have a good feeling when they use the bags.
And have you had some good response, feedback from people who have purchased the Sera bag?
It's been really neat. people have been really supportive, and I think a lot of people are identifying and resonating with the journey. I mean, like yourself, how you're saying that, you know, the journey is an enduring one. And I think people can appreciate this, you know, the story and the background behind it. And so yeah, that's been really neat. And even because sometimes, especially with this kind of stuff, you can get hung up in like that, oh, you know, are we selling enough, or, you know, are we paying things back? And at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for that. I'm doing this because I really like these bags, and I think it would be cool if other people can get the functionality that I get out of these bags. Would make me happy. And so far, like even just having a couple people say that, like it's really satisfying. Yeah.
You know, I also wanted to mention, you know, we're talking about your business journey, and I also wanted to mention Ensign, also the Destiny Forever LLC business. Please tell us a little bit more about it. Yeah.
Okay, so that started. So it's like, it's kind of neat. So the bags are like my baby, and the bracelets is like Ensign's baby. But you know, obviously we work together and support each other through the journeys. And so the bracelets, he started, about 11 or 12 years ago. He started making them, and he was having them made for him by somebody. And then that person actually went to prison. So right before he went to prison, Ensign asked him, can you show me how to make them? And so the guy showed him, and he said the first time he made it took him like 3 hours to make the bracelet. And because he wanted to learn, because every year he'd have like a get together of his ichizoku, which is like a family, like a whānau of like not blood related, like, you know, like friends whānau. And he'd buy these bracelets for everybody, but because the guy that made them was going away, he's like, oh gosh, I gotta make them myself. And considering it took 3 hours, he's like, oh, we're not doing yeah.
He's like, oh.
Yeah, so he just started making them for himself. He'd make them, and people would see them and ask about them, and then people gradually started, you know, showing interest in wanting to buy them. He's like, no, I just make these for myself. Like, no, like it's just, you know, it's just for myself. And then it got to the point where people kept insisting. So he's like, oh, okay, you know, so he started selling them, and then it just took off from there. And then as he was doing it, someone told him, went and said to him, you realize that those are crystals you're working with, right? And he's like, he didn't realize that they were the crystals, because he goes to the crystal store and he's buying, you know, like the quartz or the, you know, the onyx and stuff, just the clear and the black stones, not realizing that they're actually crystals, which have their own kind of healing properties to them too. Yeah. And so when he learned that, that's when he started his journey into crystals. And he's like a kid in a candy store when we go to like there's huge crystal expos. We go all over the world looking for different stones, which is kind of amazing. And yeah, he's like a kid in the candy store when we get to go see some of these crystals, because he's just so fascinated by them. And it's really cool to see him, you know, get excited about that. So that's, yeah. And it started like that. And then he went back to Hawaii for one trip and set up a store, just a table store. And then it just kept growing. And then that's where we are today. Yeah. He's there right now. So we have a permanent location in Hawaii now. And it's in a place where we go back 4 to 5 times a year, and we're open for a few weeks at a time. But when we're not there, it's closed up, and we just do everything online. So that way, we love it because it suits our lifestyle, and we can still service our customers from here in Japan, because we've turned, one of the rooms into an office for that. So Yeah.
The reason I did want to mention the business is because of the work, like obviously the bracelets, but then outside of making the bracelets and selling the bracelets and this business,
Yeah.
it's what you do
The
outside of
foundation.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
it's the activism and advocacy. It's
Yeah.
the work that you both do in various communities that benefit from this business.
Yeah.
That's what I really like, is that heart for community that you both have.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think when I think back, you've donated to orphanages and things like that, for the kids, also the Tohoku region.
Sure. So off the business. So before, Ensign was using, so it's not, the business itself isn't a non-profit, so that's a business, but
Right.
he was using part of the profits to
Mm,
do his missions up north. So after the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, he had a lot of friends up in like Koriyama and Fukushima. So he wanted to take, so he took, not wanted to, he did, he took supplies and help with a lot of the relief efforts for that. And we actually had to set up a foundation because legally we couldn't associate the business with doing charity work because it sent a different message. So now we established a foundation. So he has the Ensign Inoue Foundation. So we still do take profits from the bracelets and put them in the foundation, but for legal reasons, we have to say that we run it through the foundation. So yeah, so he's on mission. We call them missions. So since the earthquake, I think he's on, I want to say mission 62 or 3. So he's been up there over 60 times now. And taking supplies to there's a lot of the temporary housing was a big one a few years ago. So a lot of the people within the nuclear zone up in Fukushima were moved into temporary housing.
Yeah.
They were told that they were going to be there for, a year. And they were there, some of them, were there for, nearly 5 years. And what's sad is a lot of these people were kaumatua. So there were a lot of them were the elderly people, and some of their younger family had left them and gone to the cities for work. So they were left, being supported by the government, but not having a lot of things. So through the bracelets and through donations as well, we Ensign felt that initially he'd give to charities and stuff, but we'd find that a lot of the times when you give to some charities, it goes towards admin costs. You'd be surprised at how much of the money actually goes to the admin. So we thought by doing it this way, we know where the money's going. And because it's a charity, we have to be transparent with everything anyway. If we do the work, we don't have to be paid for it. That means more money can go towards the supplies. So that's where his kind of thoughts were at with that. And when he first went up, everyone was really standoffish and didn't want to take anything from him, because that's kind of the Japanese way too, is like they're really humble, and to the point where they won't accept or ask for help a lot of the time. So he had to kind of gain a bit of trust. And I think there were a couple people in places that were fans of his from his fighting. So that kind of gave him a little bit of an in. And then he gradually started building up good relationships with people from the senior citizens homes, from the from the orphanages, and from some of the temporary housing, so that he was able to go back time and time again and bring supplies. And it was things like water, like toilet paper, like rice, like bare necessities. And gosh, it's just, you just really puts things into perspective when you've got people that are kind of emotional and grateful for such simple things like that.
Mm.
So that's kind of, that's what started his movement. Yeah. And I feel like I can talk about it because I don't feel like I'm talking about myself, because it was totally, this was his, from his heart and his baby, because I kind of came on board when he was already doing all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm super proud of him, I suppose, to have be able to make an impact on people. Yeah.
When you're not training, excuse me, when you're not training or traveling, or taking care of your business, or looking after your babies, what do you like to do? Well, maybe, I think, as we will see from the photos on your Instagram, maybe looking after your babies is your self-care. But what do you like to do just for yourself, like to kind of pamper and like look after yourself?
I like to that isn't food related, because I really enjoy food. And Japan is, if people watching or listening haven't been to Japan, Japan has, like, the food is amazing. If ever you come here, make sure you come ready to eat, because all of the convenience store food, the konbinis, is so fresh, and the desserts are like the best.
Yeah.
So just be ready to eat. But in terms of self-care, I sometimes I feel like I don't need, because I love my life so much. Like I don't feel like I need to necessarily take time to self-care. If anything, it might be just like being able to have a nap. Yeah. Sometimes, in the afternoon naps, I really cherish. Sitting in my garden. I love I love gardening. So sitting in my veggie garden, just having a cup of tea or coffee in the morning is super nice. Yeah. That's kind of, what about you? What is your self-care?
Yeah, my whole self-care thing is really trying to disconnect, and part of that is even disconnecting from social media. Like, I will only be on at certain times, and then I give myself, like, this is how long, like, I'm like, this is how long I'm going to be on there. Just get on, do that, get off, because it just gets a bit too much. Like, I just so self-care is just disconnecting from social media, from work, and just exploring. Like, I like to explore, and I have this bucket list. That's what I mentioned. I have a bucket list for prefectures, like visiting the different prefectures in Japan. So there's 47 prefectures, and I have been to, I think, 31 or 32 now. So I'm just I'm just
have you been to
working. No, that's where I want to go. I haven't been to Hokkaido, and I haven't been to that Shikoku. I have not been to the area. So those are, I'm pretty sure those are the two areas. And then there are some places in central Japan that I haven't been to. But yeah, like I've been to, so that's, sorry, long as answer to your question.
Interesting.
But yeah, self-care is just, and sometimes it's just going to dinner with friends and just not talking about work is what I like.
That disconnection is the key word. Yeah. Like, ironically enough, I posted about it about a month ago, I think, on one of my social medias, because lately, like, I find that we've got so many things going on that I've been feeling a bit like my attention and stuff has kind of been scattered all over the place. And I think I'm really in need of a bit of disconnection, and even to the point where so I love books. I love physical books. I love the the technical, the feeling of a book, but it's just not practical when you live where we live. Like, we don't really, there's no English bookstores. You got to order them in, and then it becomes a storage thing, and you know how it is.
Yeah.
So I've been going to like ebooks on my iPad.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't have the same feeling for me. And I still feel like I'm still staring at a screen. So I was like kind of just talking about it to Ensign and saying, I think I'm going to go back to books, to regular books. That way I can close my computer, turn off my phone and my iPad, and that I can actually disconnect, because I spend way too much time on, especially lately, on social media and stuff. And I'm craving that disconnection, but haven't actively been making a move to do anything about it. So that's kind of my goal.
I think social media is great, and I always appreciate the support with the podcast, but I'm just kind of like telling myself, you don't need to be on all this time. Like, just snippets is fine. Like, you don't have to be on all this time. And I know it's different for everyone, but that's just some goals. I'm trying to, like you said, boundaries, just trying to set for myself.
Using it intentionally, like not just scrolling, because I do find myself just scrolling, and TikTok gets really addictive too.
It's interesting that you mentioned the scrolling, because actually for a few months now I rarely scroll. So what happens is, like, if I'm on and I'll see, like, if I'm like, this is the time I'm gonna go on, if I see something, I'll just bookmark it, and then I just get off. And so that when I come, because what happens, I just got sick of, like, not sick, but I was just like you said, I was like, man, a few months ago, I was like, why am I just sitting here doing nothing productive, just scrolling? So I just really taught myself to, just start bookmarking stuff, especially when it's promoting, like, Māori and Pacifica books. I'll bookmark it. And then when I know I've got like 10, 15 minutes here, then I know in that one time, I'm going to go back and I go to my archives, all my saved. So basically I save it, all my saved stuff. And so that's why you see that all at one time, I'm just posting the stuff that I've saved. And I just realized it's way better to do it that way.
I'm trying to find, a way to be more like you, like be more intentional about it. Because I suppose it's one of the things about our lifestyle too is just our businesses and our life. Like, we are kind of, like, we do put a lot of stuff on social media, and even like a lot of our like interactions with customers and all that kind of stuff comes through social media. So it's almost a necessary evil for us. But I can still do it better, like what you're doing, like just setting a bit more boundaries and being a bit more intentional.
Intentional is a good word. I like that. That's what I'm trying to do. And of course, I'm not like, it's not perfect. There are some days where I'm like totally like, why did I just been to, I mean, I'm still working at it. But
it's just crazy how fast time goes, though. Like, when you can really just scroll and not realize how much time is going.
So but social media is great. I mean, I think there's definitely advantages of but just it's just important to disconnect, just saying. So I wanted to ask you about future aspirations. What are some goals that you have in terms of your fighting, and then obviously as a business owner, like, what are some future aspirations, like, or next kind of chapter, next step for you?
The next move. So on another project or kind of thing that I do as well is I'm actually a togishi apprentice. So I am apprenticing in the art of katana, the swords sharpening.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Another thing that I do. So like, that's my, after fighting, that's kind of my long-term plan, because that's it's like a 10 to 12 year apprenticeship, and I'm about halfway through it. So my sensei lives in Kyoto, so I'll travel down there. But I've got a togi space here. Next time you come over, I can show you when you come for barbecue. So that's my long-term plan. And even that, like, the inner geek in me just geeks out, because we're dealing with swords that are hundreds of years old, and just to sit and think about these tonga, these precious things. They're going to be here. They've been here for hundreds of years before us. They're going to be here for hundreds of years after us. And my mind just goes like imagine what they've seen, you know, in those hundreds of years. So that's I feel really privileged to be on that journey. Is that the businesses, I'd like to, the Sera bags slowly, you know, keep building and expanding. And even the bracelets, the same. So we're modeling the bags off a similar thing to the bracelets, because the bracelets started we're just doing it on our terms. And it's been good because it's a sustainable growth. So we've been able to keep up with the growth. We're not interested in, because the bracelets are custom made.
Right.
So we're not interested in kind of just bulk stocking them, you know, in a store and stuff. You know, we like to make them with a bit more intention and energy. So that same thing, more, you know, kind of growth there would be nice. And doing more. So we're still working with the orphanage for Ensign's Foundation. We're still working with one of the orphanages in Fukushima. So every year we get the kids, we get their birthdays. So their birthdays, their, you know, like their gender and their shoe size and what colors they like. So we go shopping for them, and we get them like the oshare ones. We get them the really cool, the ones that fashion. And we actually ask the people at the store, because what we think is cool might not be cool for, you know, like teenagers. Like maybe we're not anymore. So so we try to get them cool shoes. So we're still doing that. So that's coming up at the end of this year. And because of COVID, we haven't been able to visit the orphanage. So we've just been sending it up by Takuban. And so that's been awesome. Again, we want to, like, Ensign's kind of vowed, you know, until he dies or we die, we're going to continue those missions with that foundation. And recently we've got a friend that has an animal sanctuary in Chiba. So we're looking at possibly even branching to helping animals too, because, you know, that's something that Ensign's really passionate about as well. So that would be neat to get involved in. And then back home, so I'm in the process of making my own foundation for back home. So setting up a scholarship or scholarships for kids from, you know, my hometown to help kind of. So my big end goal. So my end goal is I would love to bring kids from home, from Uawa, from Gisborne. I would love to bring them to Japan, like to see, you know, such a different culture, and just to see what's out there, kind of thing, to get them exploring the world is kind of my dream. So I'm working on. That's my little project I'm working on the side. I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
I'm excited for you. I love that. And then book recommendations. What do you have for us?
So I recently read. So again, my brain has been all scattered. So normally I'm like a one book person, but I've found lately that I've had like a few different on the go, because I'm trying to do, you know, a bit of self-development and you know, soul searching, I suppose, and just trying to, you know, perspective wise. And was it last year I read a book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think that's how you say his last name. Yeah. And I really liked that book. And then so I sent it to my stepsister when she was in Iceland to read. And we just had a conversation about it, you know, when I was home. And I was like, I think I need to read that again, because every time you read it, there's like different lessons or different things that come out of it. So that is really good. One that I actually enjoyed the audio book. So I bought the book and I'm going to read it again, is Can't Hurt Me. So it's an autobiography by David Goggins. So this is more one of those, I think this is more tailored towards the, you know, my fighting side of things, like physically, but I don't know. It's a really interesting book just about, pushing your own boundaries and capabilities. And then there's also this book that my good friend Rosa sent me.
Oh my God. Okay. Have you read that?
No, it's on my list. I promise.
Okay, no. Okay, you know what? You know how? Okay, I thought of you when I was home, and then I heard about Abe's assassination.
Yeah.
I thought about you, and I thought about that book.
Oh, is it kind of like?
When it talks about like political factions and stuff like that, like and then I was thinking, oh, I just thought of you, and I thought, I wonder if she's read that book. Yeah, but
it's in good keeping, I promise. And
it's no, just when you get time, and then we can talk about it. Because like in terms of like political factions and stuff like that, I just thought about that, and I was like, oh. Yeah. So when you get time, no rush. Plenty of time, sis. Let's when you're done, and then let's chat about it, because you might have a totally different perspective. I mean, anyways, it's real complex. There's all these different layers to that book, but
I like that. Yeah. Okay, I like that. What about you? What are you reading lately?
Okay, so right now I'm not reading. Right now I'm reading articles, like scholarly articles, because I'm studying. So that's what I'm doing right now. Like I'm just doing some postgrad papers. So I'm just doing that. And once school starts, I'm gonna have to start reading. I shouldn't say it like I have to, but because that sounds like I have to do it. I don't want to do it. Sorry, let me take that back. Run that back. Like once school starts, I'll be reading the texts alongside like the language students that I'm working with. So whatever they're reading in English classes, from grades 7 to 10, I'll be also reading alongside, so that when I'm working with students, like I'm not, we're having conversations about texts and whatever resources they use in class, so that once school starts up, we start Wednesday. That's when students start. They've got scattered like entry. So once that starts, I'll start looking at book lists and seeing what I need to read, so that I can help them in class. But in terms of like, what am I reading? I'm not reading a book right now. I have books. That's not to say I don't have books. I've got lots of books. I've got audiobooks to read, but I'm just kind of on pause for a week, because I need to get this, like I need to get on top of my studies.
So audiobooks. So I love audiobooks, because I do a lot of driving here in Japan. So I'm all about the audiobooks. But I find that I don't retain I don't retain it as much as if I had read it. Do you find that, or like you're good?
I think I do. Like, I think it's because I'm real intentional. There's that word again. I like to listen to books that are read by the authors, or most, I would say 90% of the time I remember like from the book. But a lot of the times I've read the book and listened to the audio just because I've absolutely loved or sometimes I've started reading the book and I just cannot connect, and then I switch to the audio, which the author's reading, and I just get lost in the story. I just get so into it and everything. I'd say 90% of the time I remember. There have been times where the author, like I've read like a book written by a really cool author, but they haven't read it. But I've really, really, really wanted to listen to the book. And sometimes I find that if it's not the author, like I'll be still like, buddy, let's do this, just get through it. But there's more connection, I think. And I remember more if it's read by the writer. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like
it's
because
just more
the
fun.
intonation and everything, the intonation and the energy of what they've written, because I found that with, I love like autobiographies and stuff too. So I listen to like Mike Tyson's and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they read, but they're part of their own, if not their whole thing. And I found that connection a lot better. Yeah. Mel Robbins is another one too. She was really animated when she was delivering her audiobook. And felt that was nice.
Yeah. So But yeah, I've got so many. I've got a few audiobooks I've got to get through. I've got lots of ebooks. I always have, like you said, storage. People always ask me, "Man, your bookcase must be," and I'm like, "Oh, don't even get me started." I'm trying to be like, is it Maria Kondo? I'm trying to like declutter and all that. Like you can't even do, because the more you buy, the more you have to like sell off if you ever leave Japan. Do you know what I mean? So, so. Maria Kondo. Yeah, so it's like, people always assume that I have like a lot of books. I don't have a lot of books, and if I really wanted to, I would just go hard, but then I'm always like, what? Yeah, so I've got a lot of books on my Kindle, which is yeah, but yeah. So right now I'm not reading anything.
Yeah. Do you know if there's a group in Japan because I remember one of our meetups, we're talking about having, just like being able to exchange, like how I got the book from you and being able to swap books and stuff like that. Do you know if there's any groups like that in Japan?
I'm not sure.
That's really hard to understand.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, like, to be honest. I think we should just start our own group. You could be the leader. Okay.
I'm thinking about
you're the leader.
How that Facebook group, the Multi-Line Japan, so things that people aren't going to use, they just put on a Facebook page. That would be cool if we had like a place for books.
Yeah, I didn't have a Facebook, but if you ever come across a group, let me know. You must have a lot of books.
Yeah, too much. Like yeah. I was trying to be intentional, but I'm going back to books because I love there's something about the feeling and I don't know. That's just
I think like how you were saying before about spending time on your phone. So with ebooks, and so I think for me that's why I'm more into audiobooks. Like I have a lot of ebooks, but I get tired of looking at the screen. But it's like when listening to my music, I can just put in an audiobook, and I just I think that's why I prefer audiobooks if I'm not reading from a book.
Yeah,
it's because I'm just listening to it, and I don't need to look at the screen. Because you're right, like, man, too much screen time just does my head in.
Yeah, I love reading in bed. I love reading before I go to sleep, so it just feels weird staring at a screen. Kind of like it's like you'll put the phone down, but then I'm looking at my iPad. So it's still screen, So I'm trying to disconnect. Yeah.
First world problems, huh? that we have. Oh my gosh. Man. Okay. Man, I feel like, hey, let's just get coffee now. Let's get some tea. Let's just carry on for another hour. Sarah, sis, I want to thank you so much. I feel like we're just catching up here, like, for real. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I remember we were at the New Zealand Embassy for Matariki, their first, Matariki, and back in June. Yeah, was it back in June? And I remember saying I was like so stressed and so anxious asking you. I remember I was just like, I was doing the whole big build up to like, I was wondering if you're like, I mean, you didn't have to. I know you're busy. I was doing this whole big build up, and you were like, "Your podcast? Yeah, of course, I'll come." And I was like thinking, "But give me a moment. Let me ask, man. But you were so cool and like, "Hey, I'll be there." Yes, I will do it. I know what you mean. Yeah,
I saw you had like Amelia, and then you had Hune, and then I was like, oh, am I not cool enough? Oh.
No. I was just like, then you were just like, I'm coming. I'll be there. And I was just like, oh, I was so like surprised. I was like, oh, really? I wasn't sure if it's something that you'd be interested in, but I know that you're a reader. So I was just like, oh, she's a bookworm. Got to get her on here. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I love what you do. I love your energy and your passion and how genuine you are, and it makes it so much easier talking to someone who's really authentic and genuine and intelligent, because you're it's great.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Appreciate the support.
No,
I
of
appreciate
course.
the support. So as you know, look at her babies. They were jumping on one of them was jumping on the table before. Now
Yeah.
look at them. They're still asleep.
Now they crashed out. They've given up trying to get my attention.
They've given up. They're like, man, she's taking too long. Yeah, I know I've taken up a lot of your time tonight.
No, I'm taking a lot of yours. Please, sorry.
We're good. As you know, as a regular listener to the podcast, this is the part where I ask the guests to just drop some final words of wisdom or encouragement, just for anyone who's watching or listening. Take it away.
No, something I got from you with this podcast is being more intentional with what you do. So whether it's social media, whether it's reading, whether it's, whatever you're working on, let's try to be more intentional with things.
Yeah.
The opening sequence of your thing, that's you singing and stuff, yeah?
Yeah, I know it's really not mastered at all. It's not mixed or anything. I just did it right here. Just put down all the shutters and just recorded it with the mic and on GarageBand.
It's awesome. I love it. It's awesome. Like it's with the lyrics and everything is great. And of course, like your voice is beautiful. So
thank you. I appreciate that. I keep like thinking I have to send it to get it mixed or mastered and whatever, done properly. Because you can hear it. I was like, but at the time I was just like, who cares? That's just how it is. This is what I'm bringing. It is what it is.
What it is. What about you? What's your final words of wisdom to close out your episode?
No, I think our final words of wisdom. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Do I have any words of wisdom? I'm not sure right now. I was just like, actually, just in regards to how we keep talking about being intentional, I think, something just real big that I'm trying to work on is just managing time better. Like that's part of the whole being intentional, right? Because it's going to be a real busy year. Like school's just started back. But I've got lots of things happening, like family stuff, work stuff, and whatnot. So being intentional, part of that is really just to manage my time better, because I'm going to be coaching as well. So there's a lot of things happening, and I'm just trying to be like, for school. So I'm trying to be more organized. Trying not to be anxious. These are not words of wisdom. This is really just in connection with your like being intentional is just managing time better. But in managing time is just making sure to just stay healthy and just be in a good space, which is so easy to say. And some of that, part of that is really choosing, what you give your energy to, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if there's a words of wisdom. I think a lot of people talk about this, so I don't think I'm saying anything new, but it's all connected to your whole, what we were talking about, being intentional, managing time, and just protecting your peace and choosing where you give your energy to. I think that's super important. I know a lot of people talk about it, but it's really hard to do because you really do have to make that choice to kind of step away and really focus on what you need to focus on and whatnot, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So I don't know if they're words of wisdom because it's nothing new, but it's just kind of like a mantra.
Because sometimes with practicing, like I know we're finishing, but I should shut up. But I'm going to talk to you.
You're fine.
With the, being intentional and like being like choosing where you give your energy. Sometimes part of that is also accepting that other things may fall to the wayside as a product. So there are going to be some sacrifices, and sometimes that can be a little uncomfortable to accept, but it's just all part of the, whether that's like, I can't fold my laundry in the morning, I have to do it later because I've got other stuff to do. I mean, that's a dumb example, but
no, I mean, but like I've exactly.
like letting things like knowing that you can't control everything kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the whole, for real.